hard work doesn't kill anyone. Maybe it doesn't, ladies and gentlemen, but overwork definitely does. Anxiety, sleeplessness, chronic stress, lack of work-life balance, declining health parameters. These are all consequences of an increasingly overwhelming professional life, which we all deal with on a daily basis, all of us. Unfortunately for Anna Sebastian, this turned out to be fatal. The 26-year-old employee of a multinational consulting firm, Ernst Young, in Pune, died because of quote-unquote overwhelming workload. This according to her mother. Anna had joined Ernst Young as a chartered accountant just about 4 months ago before she succumbed to work pressure. These claims have been made by her mother, Anita, in a letter that has been addressed to EY India's chairperson, Rajiv Memani. In her letter, Anna's mother claimed that EY was her daughter's first job, but she succumbed to quote-unquote excessive workload in just 4 months. Anna worked late into the night and on weekends, returned to her paying guest accommodation completely exhausted on most days, and was burdened with back-breaking work as a newcomer. Does the story sound familiar? Heartbreakingly, no one from Ernst Young even bothered to attend Anna's funeral. Now, when contacted by Mirror Now, EY in a statement has claimed that it was taking the family's claims with utmost seriousness and humility, but has neither confirmed nor denied the veracity of those claims. The letter by Anna's mother, which has gone viral on social media, has triggered several other former employees of EY to come forward with their harrowing stories of working with a Big Four company. Through some of these testimonies, a common thread arises. Firstly, the surplus of available labor in the Indian job market creates an environment that is conducive to exploitation, particularly due to the lack of robust labor laws in the country, which essentially means you're always insecure about your job because there are 10 people waiting for you to quit or be fired and for them to be employed. Now, this situation is further worsened by Indian managers who often exploit their juniors, fostering a workplace culture that glorifies overtime and a submissive yes boss mentality. As a result, toxic behaviors such as abuse and bullying become normalized, leading to a detrimental work environment for young employees. Now, ladies and gentlemen, not for a moment do we want to demonize companies and corporate India. They're job creators after all. The fact remains that most firms in India deal with what Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella terms a productivity paradox, where 85% managers feel that their employees are slacking off work, while 85% of employees think they're working too hard and are burnt out. Question is there a way out of this paradox? Ladies and gentlemen, Japan's brutal and hierarchical work culture has pushed many of their employees to their death since the 70s. It is the birthplace of a word that is called karoshi, a word that means death from overwork. Karoshi was a warning. Unfortunately, no one listened, and now it is an issue that is threatening India's young people. I'm going across to Priyanka Chaturvedi, who is joining us on the broadcast. She's a member of parliament and someone who is now about to bring a private member's bill on the issue. Priyanka, first things first, we've all read the contents of the letter, quite heartwarming. As a mother, what is it that broke your heart the most?
Absolutely. And considering, when I read the letter, more than a politician, more than as someone who has understood corporate work culture, it came to me, I felt a moment of despair as a mother of a child who's almost the same age as Anne, and having to wonder that what are we doing in terms of creating an environment which is, I would say, more worker friendly, more employee friendly rather than employer friendly. It is the letter. When I was reading it, there are 3 points that hit me. One, when she joins, she's expected to change the narrative of the manager she was reporting to, because many people had warned her about the manager and about the way he made it very toxic. They made her believe that she could become the change maker. She, coming into the corporate workspace, started to believe that that's a pressure, that's a responsibility she needs to undertake. So she won't say anything no to any work coming her way. She will show the way. That's part one of believing that she'll be the ideal candidate to change the toxic environment. Point two that hurt me was when her parents tell her that why don't you, not report to work. Her inability to say no and the amount of work pressure she was under. Third, I'm sure she thought she had got the dream job of her life. And the last thing she would want to do is to quit that job. So those 3 things came across to me, and that is when I shared that letter. And I was hoping that when students who have come out through a very tough academic schedule, because becoming a chartered accountant in India is also not easy. It's a very competitive exam, very competitive course. So having to go through that and then joining an environment which is toxic becomes more the responsibility of the company to handhold such graduates and career new entrants who can be handheld to merge with the company to understand the work culture. But this was extremely unfortunate, and what hit me the most was that nobody even attended her funeral. So I'm coming out with the private members bill on this, where I think if Ernst Young or any such big firm, MNC, that works in India, would it be okay to give this kind of a toxic work environment in America without being sued to death? In European nations, why is it that in India you can get away with this kind of an environment, that you work beyond the hours of duty, you're given immense workload at the last minute, targets which have to be met within a short duration, turnaround time which has barely any breathing space for a person who's employed with you. So those are things which I'm definitely going to bring to the table and bring to the forefront as far as me as a parliamentarian is concerned, and making people aware that mental health is an important issue and corporate companies should take the onus for it.
Okay, Priyanka Chaturvedi, we'll leave it there for the moment. Thank you very much for joining us. Lloyd Mathias is a business executive joining us on the broadcast. Harleen Bagga is a corporate transformation coach. She's also a psychotherapist joining us on the broadcast. And Dr. Bhavna Brahmi is a child and clinical psychologist with us on the broadcast as well. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a short discussion. Lloyd Mathias, I'm coming to you first. How do you react to what has happened in Pune? No one can deny the fact that India's work culture is toxic. That you work 7 days a week, you work 10 hours a day, and if you could be pushed, you would probably be working 12 hours a day as well. There are simply no boundaries. Is that what killed this young chartered accountant in Pune?
Thank you for having me on your show, Shreya. I think what's happened is extremely sad, and my condolences and sympathies with the family. And I'm also glad that Priyanka Chaturvedi is actually tabling a private member's bill. But having said that, I think just a couple of points. I think you have to recognize that simply putting the blame on employers is a bit simplistic. And the reason I say so is that while work pressure is a real issue, I think there are issues like workplace bullying, a toxic culture, which have no place in the modern world. Having said which, we have to recognize that this is a competitive work environment. And the reason is manifold. One is investors have great expectations from companies. CEOs are under pressure. They're under a microscope from investors. And therefore, everyone has a drive for results. We also are a very competitive nation because, say, there are too many people chasing jobs, right? So young people are pushing themselves. And I think that's a reality. And at the end of the day, I think we have to also recognize that every individual has different levels of acceptance of stress. And there could be various factors. Their upbringing, trauma when they were kids and such like. I think 2 critical issues need to be addressed. I think one is to encourage a strong whistleblowing culture. Today, whistleblowing is all about sexual harassment and financial integrity. I think whistleblowing around toxic work environments is something that has to be real. 2, I think managers and businesses in general have to build a culture of empathy. I think when managers who manage large amount of workforces, right from the CEO downwards, I think everyone should recognize that you're dealing with real people who have pressures, who have their own little battles to fight. And therefore, recognizing that aspect and bringing empathy into the workplace is critical. I think, therefore, these two issues need to be looked at in parallel with just legislating against toxic work cultures.
But Harleen Bagga, Lloyd Matthias here is talking about fostering a culture of, whistleblowing, that people should be able to go and tell the tell the management, tell the higher management that the work environment is toxic, XYZ. My point is, for all you know, the whistleblower will end up being fired, because that is what India's work culture is. You go and complain about something and you're the one who will be fired.
Fair enough. Yeah, so hi, Shreya. Thank you for having me here. So the answer to that question, according to me, is how you need to have your organizational culture. I think the key to mitigate bullying, the key to mitigate myopic vision, the key to mitigate tunnel vision that an organization can have, the key to mitigate lack of policies and lack of processes is actually to focus on an organizational culture that is actually intrinsic rather than extrinsic. What I mean by that is, I think the biggest mistake that unfortunately I believe is being done, and maybe for no real fault of anyone, is that we are focusing on what the stakeholders want, what the vendors want, what the VCs want. So we are focusing on a brand that the organization is standing for, rather than the culture that is inwards, rather than focusing on, hey, that we are an interpersonal organization, and let's focus on how we communicate, how the processes are, how the behaviors and attitudes are. Do we really have processes that imbibe, encourage, and influence what he used the word whistleblowing, but I will say initiate and encourage conversation. That dialogue is most important, right? If the culture does not even encourage dialogue, how do we expect anyone to get the courage to go and whistleblow when you know your job is at stake? Why is it that people are even in this situation? It's because of the insecurity. It's because of the lack of acceptance. It's because of the constant judgment. Just imagine the turmoil and the trauma that every person that is in the workforce today is facing on a day-to-day basis. That there is a constant judgment of being inferior or superior. It doesn't stop there. And then to expect them to conform and be compliant is also an issue. Like what was mentioned in the letter, right? She was expected to be compliant to the manager and be the change maker. She thought she had no option but to comply and set the record straight for that manager. Why? If you think about it, that's so sad. The fact that we are allowing
that is sad.
Such expectations to trickle down at an organizational level.
Dr. Barmi, but many people will say, what is even overwork? Who has decided that this 26-year-old chartered accountant died of overwork? What is overwork? Someone may feel that 6 hours is too much. For someone, even 12 hours is okay. Some people are okay working weekends as well. They don't feel overworked. There are others who just want to do five days a week. How do you decide? From a manager's point of view, anyone can walk up to me and say, look, I've worked 5 hours, I'm exhausted, I'm overworked. How do you react to that? There is another side to the story as well. You'll have to unmute yourself, Dr. Barmi.
Shreya, I think you've brought up a very important purview that stress in itself is very, very personal. And I think thereby work-life balance also becomes very personal. And I think from an organizational standpoint, there need to be some norms and some guidelines, but also as an individual, as an employee, I think each one of us has to inculcate self-awareness. That means we need to recognize our boundaries for work-life balance. Yes, like our 5 fingers, none of them are the same. None of the employees are the same. And there would be different awareness levels, different balancing levels that each one of us will have. But we need to recognize our stress triggers and how they manifest physically, emotionally, cognitively, mentally on us. And early identification should lead us to prioritize our boundaries, set our boundaries, prioritize our tasks, and use our resources which are available to us to communicate. And it's absolutely fine for you to actually seek support when you feel that your balance is going beyond the norms of what you as an individual can curtail. You can seek support, you can reach out to your peers,
Okay.
you should reach out to your supervisors or mentors. There is a lot which is called as the employee assistance program. They should not be just virtually available. I think there should be these kind of support structures available in organizations. Psychologists and counselors should be reached out to,
And
so that you can identify what are the healthier coping
I don't know
strategies
how
you
many,
can take on.
Dr. Barmi, but the fact is, I don't know many organizations and corporates who will have a resident psychologist or a psychiatrist. I really don't know of any one of them, but the fact is that is why you have seniors, that is why you have managers. Managers sometimes, I think, also need to double up as psychiatrists and psychologists to, if nothing, to speak to people. You can't professionally guide them, but at least you can calm them down. Yeah, you can just give them some perspective. Was this a failure of this young woman's manager completely? Or at least that is what her mother seems to believe. We'll leave it there. This is a topic that is buzzing on social media. It has a lot of corporate speaking. It has urban India that goes to work every day and faces these stress. All of us are talking about it. Is there a solution is the question. Lloyd, thank you very much. Harleen, thank you very much. And Dr. Bhavna, thank you very much for joining us as well. Ladies and gentlemen, on that note, I'm slipping into a break on the show. Shreya Padhya is joining you up next with all the big headlines. Do stay with us.